Nutrition, 5th edition, Chapter 8, Metabolism, by Carrie Erickson. Energy fuel for work. Energy is necessary to do any kind of work. The body converts chemical energy from food sources, such as carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, into a form that's usable by the cells. Transferring that food energy to cellular energy, stage 1, digestion, absorption, and transportation takes place, where digestion breaks food down into small subunits: simple sugar, fatty acids, monoglycerides, glycerol, and amino acids, that the small intestine can absorb. The circulatory system then transports these nutrients to tissues throughout the body. Stage 2 is the breakdown of many molecules to a few key metabolites. And stage 3 is to transfer the energy to a form that the cells can use. What is metabolism? Anabolic reactions, known as anabolism, build compounds. These reactions require energy. Catabolic reactions, catabolism, break compounds into smaller units. These reactions produce the energy. The cell is the metabolic processing center. You've got the nucleus, which contains genetic information in the DNA of chromosomes. It's the site of the RNA synthesis, and the RNA is needed for protein synthesis. It's also enclosed in a double-layered membrane. The cytoplasm is enclosed in the cell membrane and separated from the nucleus by the nuclear membrane. ATP is the body's energy currency. ATP is also known as adenosine triphosphate, and it's the form of energy that the cells use. So who are your key energy players? Adenosine triphosphate, ATP, is the fundamental energy molecule used to power cellular functions, so it's known as the universal energy currency. Two other molecules, NADH and FADH2, are important couriers that carry energy for the synthesis of ATP. A similar carrier, NADPH, delivers energy for biosynthesis. The breakdown and release of energy. The cells extract energy from carbohydrate via four main pathways: glycolysis, pyruvate, into acetyl-CoA, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. Extracting energy from carbohydrate, the citric acid cycle, on table 8.1 it actually shows how this works, and the citric acid cycle and electron transport chain require oxygen, where glycolysis does not. With glycolysis, which is the first step, this is where the glucose splits. The pathway split glucose into two pyruvates, transfers electrons to the NAD, and produces some ATP. Step 2 is the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. This releases carbon dioxide and transfers electrons to the NAD. Also, it forms lactate. This is an alternative fuel for muscles that can use, or the liver cells can convert to, glucose. Extracting energy from carbohydrates. This is actually known as the citric acid cycle. The citric acid cycle is an elegant set of reactions that proceed along a circular pathway in the mitochondria. It releases carbon dioxide, produces GTP, which is like ATP, and transfers electrons to the NAD and the FAD. And it shows this in figure 8.10 in your book. The electron transport chain produces more ATP than the other catabolic pathways. The final step in glucose breakdown is a sequence of linked reactions that take place in the electron transport chain. And the end product of glucose catabolism is ATP, water, and carbon dioxide. Extracting energy from fat. To extract energy from fat, first triglycerides are separated into glycerol and fatty acids. Next, beta oxidation breaks down the fatty acids to yield acetyl-CoA, NADH, and FADH2. The acetyl-CoA enters the citric acid cycle, producing more NADH and FADH2. The NADH and FADH deliver their high-energy electrons to the electron transport chain to make ATP. They talk about a carnitine shuttle, and this is what transports the fatty acids into the mitochondria. The other thing they talk about is beta oxidation, and this breaks apart the fatty acids into acetyl-CoA and transfers the electrons to the NAD and the FAD. And then, of course, the citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain is where the complete of the fatty acid breakdown occurs. The fat burns in a flame of carbohydrate. Conditions such as starvation and consumption of high-fat, low-carbohydrate diets can deplete oxaloacetate, blocking the acetyl-CoA from entry. This reroutes the acetyl-CoA to form a family of compounds called ketone bodies. The production of ketone bodies can occur with popular high-protein diets that are low in carbohydrates but also high in fat. The breakdown and release of energy. Extracting energy from proteins. The carbon skeleton enters the pathway at different points. To extract energy from amino acids, first it is deaminated. The amino acid is removed. Depending on the structure of the remaining carbon skeleton, it enters the catabolic pathway as pyruvate, acetyl-CoA, or a citric acid cycle intermediate. The citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain complete the production of ATP. The end product of amino acid catabolism, the liver converts the nitrogen portion of amino acid to urea, which the kidney excretes. With alcohol metabolism, the metabolism of alcohol inhibits the citric acid cycle and primarily forms fat. And this is just showing how that happens. It's figure 8.18 in your textbook. Also, with large amounts of alcohol, it overwhelms the alcohol dehydrogenase system, and it uses microsomal ethanol oxidizing system, and that figure is also shown in figure 8.19. Biosynthesis and storage. Tissues differ in their preferred source of fuel. The brain, nervous system, and red blood cells rely primarily on glucose, while other tissues use a mix of glucose, fatty acids, and ketone bodies as a fuel source. Making carbohydrates, which is glucose. When carbohydrate is available, glucose can be stored as glycogen in liver and muscle tissue. Gluconeogenesis, this is the pathway to glucose. Glucose can be produced from the non-carbohydrate precursors, glycerol, and some amino acids, but not from fatty acids. And the storage is glucose gets stored as glycogen. And this occurs in the liver and the muscle. This shows the breakdown and release of energy, figure 8.20 in the textbook. It shows as if they were traveling through a maze of city streets. Molecules move through a network of breakdown and biosynthetic pathways. Not all pathways are available to a molecule. Just as traffic lights and one-way streets regulate traffic flow, cellular mechanisms control the flow of molecules and metabolic pathways. These mechanisms include hormones, irreversible reactions, and the location of the reactions in the cell. Making fatty acids. Lipogenesis is the pathway to fatty acids, and fatty acids are stored, the energy is stored as triglycerides. And table 8.3 shows a summary of these energy yields for fatty acids, glycerols. Making ketone bodies. Ketone bodies, you might recognize the term acetone because this chemical is a common solvent. In fact, you can smell the strong odor of acetone on the breath of people with high level of ketone bodies in their blood. Their breath smells sweet, like some nail polish removers. Your body makes and uses small amounts of ketone bodies at all times. Ketogenesis. During the breakdown of fatty acids, not all acetyl-CoA enters the citric acid cycle. Your body converts some acetyl-CoA to ketone bodies, a process which is called ketogenesis. To dispose of excess ketone bodies, your kidneys excrete them in urine and your lungs exhale them. If this removal process cannot keep up with the production process, ketone bodies accumulate in the blood, a condition which is called ketosis. There's two types of ketosis: normal ketosis that occurs with fasting, and the medically dangerous hyperketonemia of diabetic ketoacidosis. Making protein, biosynthesis as far as making amino acids, your body rebuilds protein from a pool of amino acids in your cells. But how is that amino acid pool replenished? Your diet supplies some amino acids, the breakdown of body protein supplies some, and the cells make some. During protein synthesis, your cells can make dispensable amino acids and retrieve indispensable amino acids from the bloodstream. Your cells cannot make indispensable amino acids. However, if a cell lacks an indispensable amino acid and your diet doesn't supply it, protein synthesis comes to a stop. The cell breaks down this incomplete protein into its constituent amino acid, which are returned to the bloodstream. Regulation of metabolism. The hormone insulin regulates metabolism by favoring anabolic pathways. It promotes the uptake of glucose by cells, thus removing it from the bloodstream. Glucagon, cortisol, and epinephrine stimulate catabolic pathways. These hormones promote the breakdown of glycogen to glucose and of amino acids to make glucose via gluconeogenesis. The breakdown of liver glycogen increases the amount of glucose in the blood. Hormones and other factors regulate the balance of anabolic and catabolic pathways in energy metabolism. The hormones insulin stimulates glycogen, protein, and triglyceride synthesis. The hormones glucagon, cortisol, and epinephrine stimulate breakdown of glycogen and triglycerides. Special states. Feasting. Feasting or overconsumption of energy leads to glycogen and triglyceride storage. Special states fasting. Fasting or underconsumption of energy leads to mobilization of liver glycogen and stored triglycerides. Starvation, the state of prolonged fasting, leads to protein breakdown as well and can also be fatal. They actually talk about fasting, the prolonged stages. The first few days, fat and protein are the primary fuels. The early weeks of starvation, as it continues, the body initiates several energy conservative strategies. The body temperature lowers, pulse rate, blood pressure, and resting metabolism all decrease. With several weeks of fasting, the later stages exhaust the final fat stores and the body turns again to protein, its sole remaining fuel source. And then when the end is near, in the final stage, the body deteriorates rapidly. You can see the severe muscle atrophy and emaciation in photos of Holocaust victims. Their bodies are sacrificed muscle tissue in an attempt to preserve brain tissue. The final stage of starvation attacks the liver and the intestines, greatly depleting them. It moderately depletes the heart and kidneys and even mounts a small attack on the nervous system. We will